What is going on, everybody? Another episode of Denmark and Marsh on a Thursday afternoon, day 4 of the transfer portal. I'm surprised nobody's hit the portal yet, or that Florida's gotten somebody from the portal of note. But it's going to happen, obviously, in the next coming of weeks. They have till December 28th to come on, Graham. This is a professional broadcast.
I know I'm dropping
God
stuff.
bless.
I know. That's on me, Coach.
You can get us on Twitter at 1010XL Denmark and at 1010XL Graham. Make sure you're subscribing and liking to all of the 1010XL Gators podcasts and shows, whether it be myself and Graham, Hicken and Frangie, or that slappy podcast that Hacker and Graham do. That's only on Fridays, right? Friday afternoon.
Fridays. Gator Bites, baby.
Yeah,
presented by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists.
Yes. All right, Graham. I'm gonna go on a small tangent.
Do it.
And you're gonna come. You'll reply probably for 10 minutes, and then I want to talk about the schedule.
Okay.
Dog, y'all got to chill out with Jack Pyburn hitting the portal. This is not Carlos Dunlap, Dominique Easley, Sharif Floyd. This is a dude that was a rotational person. Do I wish he came back? Yeah. But you told us on the pod, it happened live at the end of our show. If you want to go back and look at our live reaction. When you hit the portal, it's either got to do with money. I don't think it was that. Playing time would probably what it was, or his girlfriend left and goes to Alabama, and now they can't do TikToks together. Which one do you think it is, people? I mean, dude, this is like Justin Trato hitting the portal. This is not that big of a deal. Like, you told me, I was like, you said,
Justin Trato, man, that is a name from the past.
You talk about, hey, Jack Pyburn hit the portal. I go, dang, that's crazy. Like, all right, now I'm hungry. Let's go get some lunch. Like, that was my thought. Like, people have overreacted with all of this. And I guess there's nothing else to talk about when it comes to the portal. But if it were a month ago and you would have told me, hey, Pyburn hits the portal, I'd be like, okay. But all these people, like, tripping, bro. That was my thought.
I think it's a lot more of a snapshot of where we are in college football today than it is an indictment on the program or anything like that. It's really not. I agree with you. The main reason that it sucks is because in the past, that's the type of guy that is like a real senior leader, like true Gator through and through, like gets a big roar from the crowd on senior day type of dude, like kind of an old school player you thought in terms of shows up in the program, doesn't play a whole lot early on, like local kid from Jacksonville, like grew up a Gator fan, went to bowls, and kind of works his way up and becomes a real important player for you his junior and senior year, and gets to call himself a Gator for the rest of his life type of thing. And that's not what happened, and that's not today's college football. Does that mean that Billy Napier's losing the locker room or something stupid like that? No, it doesn't mean even close to that. I agree with you. It ain't like they lost Von Miller yesterday or 2 days ago whenever he transferred. I mean, look, I agree with you 100% that it's playing time is the number one factor here. Ryan the Hacker Green, who we were talking about, you can confirm this. Didn't you guys have his dad on the other night? Nope. Okay. Never mind. All right.
But I mean, everybody's been tweeting about it. Everybody's saying that he wanted $45,000. He was a third down rotational guy, and he wanted to be a starter. And Napier basically was like, no, you're probably not going to get that. And that's exactly what I said the other day, right when it happened. That's probably what it was, and that's what it is. I mean,
it comes down to third down. That's what it comes down to, because he plays a lot on first and second down. He's a good run stuffing edge guy. But on third down, man, when you've got Tyreek Sapp playing the way he played all year, and I think there's a decent chance he's going to be back in orange and blue next year. We haven't heard an announcement on that yet, but I believe, especially with Pyburn leaving, I have to believe that's probably what's going to happen is Tyreek Sapp is going to be back. You look at how well George Gums came on toward the end of the year, especially. You look at the fact that you have to imagine the coaching staff is expecting L.J. McCray to be one of your top contributors on the defensive line going into next year. The third down snaps are going to be tough to come by for Jack Pyburn unless you have a couple key injuries. I mean, in what world is it? Are you playing against Miami and you're in Coral Gables and it's 3rd and 5, and you've got to get to the quarterback and get a stop here in the third quarter, and Jack Pyburn's going to be one of your guys coming off the edge? That wasn't going to happen, right? It was going to be some of these other guys that we just said. Again, especially if Tyreek Sapp comes back. So I know the list of demands came out the other day from, I think it was Abel Verdi that tweeted about it and talked about reportedly some of the things that Jack Pyburn wanted guaranteed for him. The money thing, I don't know. None of us really truly know. None of us can really speak on it. It's all he said, she said, hearsay stuff. We don't totally know for a fact. But the stuff, to your point, that adds up to me is third down. Because if I'm Jack Pyburn in his thought process, the way that you become a high draft pick is third downs getting sacks, right? We all know that is becoming an elite pass rusher. That's who gets drafted high. Pyburn, for the most part, is probably going to be like a day 3 type of pick if you had to imagine the NFL draft if he were to go out today. He's got some work to do on the field in terms of pass rushing abilities and getting sacks next year to elevate that draft stock. And if he believes that he can go elsewhere and get more third down snaps to be able to do that and prove that, and he's going to make some money along the way, more power to him, man. It doesn't mean that Jack Pyburn's a bad guy. It doesn't mean that it's an FU type of thing to him unless he goes to a rival, then it changes. And it doesn't mean Florida's screwed, man. Florida's got pass rushers now. Florida was killing quarterbacks in the backfield the end of last year. And basically everybody that was contributing to that is back. And you added in the trenches, Caleb Banks is back. And you have to imagine they're going to add some guys in the portal in the interior of the defensive line. Gators are fine, man. I totally agree with you.
All right. Let's move on to what happened yesterday with the schedule. At a quick glance, it's a very odd schedule. I'm sure most people have seen it by now. You play LSU week 3, Miami right after that. You play Tennessee the week before Florida State. There's a couple of tough back-to-backs, specifically on the road. But looking at a quick glance, at first glance, I think Florida should be favored in 8 games, maybe 9, depending on how good the season is. I feel like Florida's going to be an underdog. The Texas game, definitely. The Georgia game, maybe Texas A&M, and then there probably one more game, maybe at LSU, depending on how it goes. A couple of big news that's happened in the last couple of days for the guys that are on the opposing teams that Florida's going to play next year. If you haven't seen, Garrett Nussmeier, quarterback for LSU, is coming back next year, which is a big deal. He was expected to probably be a first-round pick in the draft. He's coming back. Martinez, the Miami running back, he's playing in the bowl game, has not said if he's going to the draft or not. And that's going to be a pretty big deal if he does. Miami's losing like half their offense, and obviously their defense isn't good. I was talking a little bit to JJ. It was Sunday. He's like, a lot of their guys on the offense are probably leaving. They got quite a few seniors, and then they got a lot of juniors. So their team is going to look a lot different next year, and obviously I'm sure they'll, it depends on who their quarterback is and how you build from that. What else was there? This is the biggest thing that I looked at before I throw to you, Graham. At LSU is the same day Georgia plays Tennessee, so that's either going to be a 3:30 or an 8 o'clock game. Rather not be at 8. I'd rather it be at 3:30. Obviously, the less bourbon the Louisiana fans have, the better. Texas. So Florida they had 2 byes again. Florida has a bye before Texas. Doesn't really have an effect on Texas because Texas has a cupcake before they play Florida, and right before that cupcake they have a bye. So not really that much of an advantage for Florida when they play Texas. Before Florida plays Mississippi State, they have a bye. A little advantage to Mississippi State. That game's at home. Before Florida plays at Ole Miss plays the Citadel. So I kind of like look at who Florida plays, the opponents who they played before, because if they have a tough stretch and then they play Florida, that kind of goes into a favor for Florida because, we saw last year, you got it in November, and it's like you have all these injuries and everybody's getting beat up. Now, it worked to Florida's advantage because of all these freshmen they had to play. And then also at the end of the year, Tennessee's got a bye and a cupcake before they play Florida. So it's a tough schedule. And then once you look into it a little deeper, there's a lot of games where it doesn't really favor Florida when it comes to, the opponents having tough stretches before they play Florida.
On that note, no, but at least just for the Gators perspective, what I like about the schedule and the way it shakes out, I think it shakes out actually pretty favorably for the Gators. Not in terms of what you're just. I get it that it's pretty soft for the teams before they have to play the Gators, and I agree with you there. What I will say though, and what I like a little bit better this year, and the way it shakes out is, there's no like month-long murderers row type of thing the Gators are going to have to go through again. Like last year, we kind of all knew that once that Georgia game kicked off, it was just an onslaught after that. Now, of course, at the time going through it last year, we thought Florida State was going to be far, far, far better than they were. So that ended up being a layup at the end of the season. But it didn't change the fact that Florida last year had to go Georgia, at Texas, LSU, Ole Miss. Like, that's crazy for a month straight. That's a crazy string of games you got to play. This year, I think the way it lays out with the 2 byes and where they are and who they play and when they play them, it breaks up a little bit easier, in my opinion. You get to start the year a little softer, thank God. Florida gets to play Long Island at first, who they're going to beat by 100. And they play USF at home, second game, who they're going to win that game. So USF's pretty good, but Florida should handle them no problem. So you're going to start the year 2-0. Totally agree with you with LSU. I need as little bourbon in them as possible when they start. But then you just go through. I'm not going to go through every single game, but you just go through the rest of the schedule. Like, LSU, Miami, Texas, then Texas A&M. That would be a murderer's row type of month if you looked at kind of the way just comparing it to last year. That would be a really brutal month, but you get a bye right in the middle of that to help you out and soften things some. Between Miami and Texas, that's really important where that bye falls, in my opinion. And then Mississippi State, I think it's going to be maybe a little bit better, but I still don't think they're going to be that good. And that game's in Gainesville. I think Florida, that shouldn't be a crazy, tough, grueling game for them. Get another bye, obviously, and then Georgia. Kentucky's kind of in disarray right now, man. I don't think that's going to be that great of a team. You got to play up there, which is tough, but I think you'll be fine. Ole Miss, tough game. Tennessee, tough game. And then I think Florida State is going to be terrible again. So you never go more than like 2 games where it's like, oof. Yeah. Like, this is brutal.
The only tough stretch you have is Texas A&M. You got Texas at home off a bye, which helps a lot. And then you go to A&M.
Yeah. And even still, that's only 2 games.
Yeah.
But like you get to soften that after that with Mississippi State at home.
Yeah. Early on, everybody's going to look at LSU and at Miami. I don't know what LSU is going to be next year. And obviously, we have no idea because we're still not even a week into the portal. Nussmeier comes back, like I said earlier, is a big deal. Graham, did you know I think they were last in the SEC in rushing. They were 107th in the nation in rushing. They got to fix that, and they got to fix that in a hurry if they want to be anywhere compatible. And then Miami, I don't know, man. I look at coaching, especially early in the season. I just don't think Cristobal is that good of a coach, man. I think
he's not. You don't think that because he's not.
And I just look at he's a good recruiter, but like that doesn't scare me. So I think Florida at worst goes 3-1 those first 4, and then you lose. I think you lose one of those Texas A&M games, and then the rest of the year you got to win out to have a for sure spot in the playoff. Because I think what happened this year is probably going to be very indicative of what's going to happen next year. You got to be tended to have a pretty lock in the playoff. If you're 9-3, you're on the bubble, and if you're 9-3, then it's going to come down to your losses, who you've lost to, and how ugly it is. Because the committee from this year is going to be the same for next year, and they're probably going to value the same thing, if I had to guess.
I think my expectation, we've talked about this already for a little bit here and there. My expectation for this team next year is they just have to be in the playoff conversation all season. And if they end up getting a loss, at the end of the year, if, Tennessee gets them or Ole Miss gets them in Oxford or Kentucky gets them in Lexington or whatever, to give them that third loss and that kind of that kind of eliminates them, then I can live with that. What I can't live with is if that's their fourth or fifth loss and it was already over by the Georgia game. Yeah. That I can't live with. If I have that, then I think we're right back where we started last year, and you're getting a new head coach.
I wonder, the last 2 years, Florida started with Utah. Since Billy Napier's gotten there, they started twice with Utah and then Miami.
Yeah.
We all agree, all tough games coming out of the jump.
Yeah.
And Napier looked good with Anthony Richardson. I think a lot of that had to do with nobody knew who Anthony Richardson was on film. You didn't know how to game plan for him. Then it came out year 2, really bad. Miami, really bad. You have that advantage this year. You have Long Island and you have USF. And USF is decent. I think USF is an upgrade from UCF, what we thought they were going to be this year when Florida played them. But you can at least figure out if you have any questions with your roster on, any positions, you can get a little sense of what you have before you start playing a big boy, which I like. And I think that's a big deal. You're not playing Miami week 1. You're trying to figure everything out.
Yeah, I agree because I love the way that they slowly ramp up to a big game because you start the season with Episcopal High School in Gainesville against Long Island, and they're going to win that game by 100, obviously, like we said. USF is better, but they're not a powerhouse. So you ramp it up a little bit, elevate a little bit, and then by week 3, when you're at LSU and obviously real bullets really start flying, you've gotten a little bit under your belt. They almost get a preseason in a way, right? And we saw last year, to your point, something that concerns me, Dylan. Tell me your thoughts here. The number one thing that concerns me heading into this year about Billy Napier, and what has me concerned that this thing could get us right back to where we started when there were pitchforks and torches out and you and I were firing him and everybody was firing him. When we've gone back this couple times, some of these injuries to these veterans last year saved his job.
It was a blessing. Yeah. It was a blessing.
Correct.
It's period, point blank.
Correct. So he clearly misevaluated who needs to be playing the lion's share of the snaps early in the season. Because before those injuries happened against Miami and A&M, you had dudes on offense and defense that don't belong as starters on an SEC football field that were starting. And I'm not talking about Mertz and Johnson. That their backups ended up being better with Ball and Lagway, of course, but they obviously belong on the field. I'm not talking about them, even though they were part of this injury core that helped. But like DJ Douglas, starting at the beginning of the year, he doesn't belong, with due respect, he doesn't belong on an SEC football field. And when he got hurt, when Asa Turner and DJ Douglas get hurt, and you obviously had Castell, who's been playing and solid player, and then you put in Bryce Thornton and Sharif Denson gets some reps. All of a sudden, Florida's blowing a lot less coverages, and that's odd to me that they're Carnell Bell says Turner at safety and Boone didn't belong on the field. Correct. That Carnell, you get exactly what I'm saying. Justice Boone, man, what are we doing? Boone getting,
and it was number 1. You give number 1 to your best player usually.
What the hell are we doing? Justice Boone number 1? What? That, and that's what concerns me about going into this year. I think the schedule is going to help out with that a little bit because you're going to have 2 games that even if you are misaligning people, you're probably still going to win. Long Island, you're definitely going to win. USF, you should. And hopefully by LSU, we are as close to having the best 22 out there on both sides of the ball that we can get. And if that happens, I feel good because I believe it's weird. It's a weird kind of conundrum with this staff because I believe in their ability to evaluate portal talent and evaluate recruiting talent, but I don't believe in their ability to make sure that the right guys hit the field. Which is odd. You wouldn't expect those 2 things to contradict each other, but they do.
Yeah. I wonder if they're going to change that anyway, how they evaluate, the offseason going into next year with spring and all that. We got a question from K-Swiss. Are they going to get OC? Doubt it. Haven't heard anything. I don't think it's going to change.
Agree.
Napier's going to be calling plays. He'll probably do the same thing he did this year. And
You would have been hearing some sort of rumblings at some
Yeah.
point around the time that Florida State hired Malzahn.
Yeah. So
And right now you're seeing, like, obviously Belichick went to Carolina, Dan Mullen went to UNLV today. Like, there's no way you would have heard nothing by now if they planned on doing it. So
yeah.
I would. It ain't K-Swiss, with due respect. Like, I wish I was with you. I wish it was happening, but it's just not. For everybody wondering, Dylan and I would both be shocked if they hired an OC at this point.
Yes. Also, news: Florida State is getting Boston College's quarterback. Something I forgot to mention.
Castellanos.
Yeah, Castellanos, the short guy. He's like a Kyler Murray kind of dude.
Yeah.
He quit on his team middle of the year, which was very weird. He played good, and then I forget exactly what happened middle of the year, which has happened. Like it happened to USC's quarterback Miller Moss. It happened to him. As somebody that plays Florida State every year, I'm fine with that. I mean, you can have him. That's not a quarterback where I go, oof. That's
I'd much rather play
whatever.
him than Luke Kromenhoek. I think Kromenhoek's pretty good.
Yeah, and
he had an impossible situation, especially against Florida, with Florida's D-line really starting to eat toward the end of last year, and that offensive line. I mean, that offensive line was embarrassing. So they were right to go get somebody that can move and has legs, because that offensive line, if you got a statue back there, they're going to get him killed.
Yeah.
But with Florida State, man, it's like, dude, are they ever going to develop a quarterback with Mike Norvell?
Well, here's the thing, man. It's like you have to start with the quarterback, but, dude, there is so much wrong with that team, man. I mean, it's like I told you whenever it was 2 weeks ago, like, where do you go if you're Mike Norvell? You hired your OC, Gus Malzahn. You bring him in to get better quarterback play, obviously. You're hiring a new DC, but your roster is depleted, man. Like, it is shocking how your team went 13-0, and, like, you don't have any dudes that are at least freshmen that are really good, where you can look forward to next year and say, okay, we got a couple of guys here. Like, there's none of that.
No, none of that at all. And to your point, I mean, they've suffered more attrition than I think they're going to suffer, or they're going to gain assets here as guys start landing at a lot of places. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's tough up there in Tallahassee, but here in Gainesville, Dylan, as we're kind of looking through the schedule and we're talking about, I mean, I know you just said, I know you were just kind of going through it and saying that probably 8 or 9. Did you say 7 or 8 or 8 or 9 games they'll probably be favored in?
I'd say 8, maybe 9 if everything falls in
depending on how things go. Yeah. That's a pretty big change from last year, I would say. So
yeah, I mean, they were the underdog against Miami, A&M, UCF, Tennessee, Georgia, LSU, Ole Miss, Texas.
So Florida State, Samford, and Kentucky, I think, were the only games they were favored in.
And Mississippi State.
Yeah, you're right. So 4. Oof. Yeah, because, I mean, the first 2 games you're going to be favored. That's 2. Mississippi State, you're going to be favored at home. That's 3. Kentucky on the road, depending on how things shake out, you're probably going to be favored in that game. Florida State, you're going to be favored in that game. And we'll kind of see with the rest. I'm really curious to see what ends up being the line for that Miami game. Both teams got to play some games before to see what ends up there, but that's going to be an interesting game.
Miami, who does Miami open up with? They open up with somebody big. Hang on one second.
While you're looking up, James says we'll be ranked week 1. James, I agree. I think Dylan and I talked about this. Oh wow, that is a big game. So we're going to learn a lot about Miami early.
Yeah.
And who they get in the portal for a QB is going to be pretty important there. A lot of smoke about Malik Murphy from Duke going there potentially. Yeah, James was saying we'll be ranked week 1. I totally agree. Dylan, you and I talked about this signing off for the regular season after Florida State. You still agree with me that in the 15 to 20 range, you think they'll be ranked somewhere? 17, 18, something like that to start the season?
Yeah, they'll probably be, I'd say no higher than 17. No higher than 17, 18. Just because of lag away. I think eventually they're going to do away with this dang stupid preseason because I mean, we have all these preseason, thoughts going into a team because their team is good because of what they did the year before, and obviously with the playoff now, I think eventually it'll go away. But I mean, it's something for us to talk about. We're all in the content. I mean, like for example, Bill Belichick going to UNC. Like, I don't think it's going to work, but I love it. Like, I think it's great for the sport. We're going to talk about it a lot. They're going to be like Colorado last year. They're going to be the most talked about team in the month of September.
What do you think about a little bit closer to home? What do you think about Dan Mullen at UNLV?
That's very surprising.
I'm surprised he took that job too. He's had smoke at bigger jobs than that since he left Florida.
I was thinking about this before we go. This will be the last thing I say. So think about the last 4 Florida coaches after Meyer and before Napier. McElwain left Florida, went to Central Michigan. He just stepped down. Muschamp was a DC at Auburn, was the head coach of South Carolina. Not a head coach, great coordinator. And then Dan Mullen now, who went to Florida, did a little bit of TV, now is at UNLV. Like, think about that, man. I mean, it's not as an AD, you got to get the right hire. And, all these pukes that aren't Florida fans always tell you, well, Dan Mullen was doing good. He had 3 years. They had 1 bad year. It's like, dude, like we all know the landscape of why Dan Mullen was let go. And, all those guys are just listed. Like, they haven't left Florida and they haven't succeeded at high levels. So I don't know. And, I'm of the opinion that Napier's not going to go anywhere until Lagway leaves. I think Napier's staying for 2 years unless something drastically happens. So, yeah, that was just my quick thought on Mullen going to UNLV. Very surprising. Very surprising. I saw that last night.
James asked, did they hire Mullen already? Yes, Mullen will be UNLV's head coach next year.
Yeah.
I think UNLV is perfect for him, though. Kind of a shocking, like,
he likes to gamble.
That he took that job, but like it's literally perfect for him. Like he's gonna be at a place where they're not expected to make the playoff every year and win at the highest level every year, but he's always gonna have them winning probably 9, 10 games a year in that conference. I'll tell you one thing: if Dan Mullen was the coach at UNLV right now, they might have beaten Boise State the other night when they played them in the Mountain West Championship. Yeah. Dan Mullen wins those types of games.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what makes him a good coach. When Dan Mullen is at his very best as a coach, is when your expectations are like a C- for a team, and he gets them to play at like a B+. But the problem is, once you get that team to a B or B+, he doesn't elevate to an A+. Yeah. Because he doesn't recruit and get the dudes that you need. James says, can they keep him off the slots? Maybe, but they probably can't keep him off the wake serve. Yeah. So, but he doesn't have to recruit all that hard there. Like he can just get the guys that he needs in the high school class, and it doesn't have to be some crazy impressive class, and then just get a portal QB every year and develop him into something pretty good, and that'll be all she wrote. And at UNLV, yeah, I think he'll be pretty good there. It's interesting he took that job. I mean, he was linked a little bit to the Syracuse job, I think, before they hired Fran Brown. That would have made more sense to me. Mullen's a Northeast guy, and I didn't think he was going to take a job where he'd be like borderline irrelevant in big-time college football. I thought he'd take a job that, like you think about last week too, or I guess 2 weeks ago now during rivalry week when Syracuse and Miami played, like Syracuse taking them down. Again, those are the types of games Dan Mullen wins. I thought
North Carolina, like those kind of schools.
Correct. I thought that's where he would have gone. So maybe he goes to UNLV for 2 years, kicks ass, and then takes a job like that. Who knows? But it's just interesting to see all the coaching movement right now. I think Gus Malzahn is going to be a beautiful disaster in Tallahassee as OC. I wish the Gators here would hire an OC, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's pretty much all quiet on the Western Front in terms of coaching changes. A lot of people keep wanting Billy Gonzalez gone, and that I don't think that's going to happen either. So yeah, coaching wise, I think we stay. Florida's going to pretty much stand pat and be exactly what they are right now. which I'd like to make a couple changes, but I can't be totally mad at complete continuity for recruits you're trying to bring in, portal guys you're trying to bring in, because those guys look for stability. So we a lot of times are guilty in the media and as fans of talking out of both sides of our mouth because we always want this guy fired and this guy fired and this guy fired, but then we scratch our heads when certain recruits and transfer portal guys don't want to come.
Hey, got breaking news. And I got to roll in a minute.
Okay.
Luke Kromenhog transferred to Mississippi State.
Wow.
Wait. Sorry. He's going to visit Mississippi State for 2 days. So if you visit a team for 2 days, that's something. This is from Hayes Fawcett. I jumped the gun. He is not committed. He's going to take a visit there December 15th and 16th, which is what's today's the 12th, so next week. So
that would be interesting. Jeff Levy getting some things going.
Yeah. All right. We'll give y'all a show next week, and we'll give y'all a post-game show Friday night. And we'll have some fun, man. Appreciate everybody popping in. Got about, a couple people on Facebook and the YouTube. Make sure you tell a friend that we're on. And we appreciate everybody tuning in. So everybody have a good weekend. And anything that happens in the portal, we'll talk about it.
Peace.